August 20th, 2013, China's border. I woke to an overcast sky and pushed my bike to the road. Just as I was getting ready to begin, a small pickup truck stopped in front of me. The guy driving got out to greet me, and when I told him I was going to China, he offered me a ride. I was tired of Mongolia and wanted to put the desert behind me. I piled my gear into the back, then climbed into the cab. The man was on a work trip, driving to China from Ulaanbaatar. He showed me pictures of his family, and I tried to tell him about my journey. We struggled to communicate, and mostly sat in silence. I looked out the window and felt no sense of disappointment that the landscape was racing past. There was only desert, dry and still. 15 miles from the border, we entered a slum that also served as a dry port for the goods coming in. Hundreds of trucks were loading and unloading, stopping for repairs or taking breaks. Mechanics sat outside their greasy tin shacks surrounded by stacks of enormous tires. Fenced-off lots as large as soccer fields warehoused coal. Everything was covered in sand, black dust, and diesel soot. We pulled into a small tin and brick building blackened by the dirty air. The driver walked around chatting like he knew the people there. I followed along until we found a small restaurant with 3 tables. My new friend bought us lunch, stir-fry with chewy, unidentifiable meat, a few vegetables and rice, all served on a cast-iron plate in the shape of a bull. The food was delicious and made me excited for the good meals ahead of me in China. I was given chopsticks for the first time as well. I imagined a map with borders drawn by which utensil is used, and after 6 months, I had finally crossed the Kingdom of Forks. We got back on the road to drive the last dozen miles to the border and quickly came to a toll booth. Like a true Mongolian, the man turned off the pavement to make his own road, and he wasn't the first to do so. To deter people from skipping the toll, a deep trench with sheer walls ran alongside the highway for many miles. We raced to the desert at high speed looking for a place to cross the ditch. The man was having fun, and I was hanging on. Eventually, we found a narrow spot where the trench had caved in, and we could get back onto the road. We arrived at the border, and I climbed out of the truck to talk with the agent at the gate. His English was fluent, and he kindly explained that the border crossing was for Mongolian and Chinese citizens only. Pointing to the east, he said that I would need to go 400 kilometers to the international crossing. I followed his finger to look out at the driest landscape I have ever seen, the depths of the Gobi Desert. I made a half-hearted attempt to convince him to let me cross, but he had no authority to break the rules. He said the only way was to get a note from the capital. Dejected, I unloaded my things from the truck and thanked the driver for his help. He gave me a shrug and a half smile. I understood he wished he could have helped more. I watched him drive away and disappear into China. I had given my full physical and emotional effort to reach the border, and to be rebuffed at the gate threw me careening towards despair. I was exhausted and no longer had the will to go deeper into the desert, to persist on the edge, to keep trying so damn hard. I looked around at the hot, merciless landscape and back down the long road I had just arrived on. As much as I wished otherwise, there was no one coming to rescue me. I would have to rescue myself. I took a deep breath, stayed my emotions, and began. My paper map had one other option, to cut across the heart of the desert. There was not a continuous road shown, but this way would shorten the trip by 150 miles. I weighed my options carefully, but in the end, my decision was an emotional one. I was beginning to crack and needed to get out of Mongolia as fast as I could. The shorter route required me to go 25 miles east to a road that paralleled the one I was on, but my map showed no way to get there. I biked down the highway until I found 2 tire ruts in the sand heading in the right direction. I got out my map again to study for any detail that would help me make the decision, but there was little to go on. With great trepidation, I rolled off the pavement and pedaled into the empty desert. Miles later, the sound of trucks faded away behind me, and I was alone. Tracks pointed across the land in many directions, and I realized the road I wanted might be hard to recognize when I got there. I began to second-guess myself, and the safety of the highway beckoned me to turn around. I was losing my confidence with every passing mile. My salvation came in the form of fresh pavement pointing north and south to the horizon. I checked my maps again and saw nothing. Seemingly, I discovered a previously unknown highway. There was also a small facility with a few cars in the parking lot, and feeling very confused, I went inside to ask for directions. I pulled the door closed behind me and turned to see the shocked faces of a half-dozen office workers. I remembered my long beard and tattered clothing and wondered what they were thinking. They got up from their desks, and I was given a bottle of water while they gathered around to look at my map. One of them pointed out that the road I was trying to get to was not a road at all, but a border between states. I held the map close to my face. The photocopy wasn't good to begin with. The paper was deteriorating from 2 trips across Mongolia, and the text was in Russian. Misreading the map might have been a grave mistake if a highway hadn't inexplicably appeared to stop me. I would have wandered deep into the desert, searching for a dashed line in the sand. I got on the highway heading north, as was suggested to me. The road was quiet except for an occasional construction vehicle. Most of the drivers stopped to see if I was all right and to give me water. I could see them wondering how I got there. When a Land Cruiser stopped, a mining engineer and his driver got out to talk to me. The engineer spoke fluent English and asked where I was going. I told him that I found the road unexpectedly and was following the pavement north, explaining that I didn't know where I was or where I was going. Laughing, he asked if I knew where I had come from. Portugal, I replied, pointing 6,000 miles to the west. I'm not sure how desperate I looked, but he was inclined to help. The engineer explained that I was on the service road going to Oyu Tolgoi, an open pit mine with one of the world's largest deposits of copper. The engineer said to keep biking north, and the driver would come back at the end of the day to take me to his home in Konbogdi. I thanked them before they sped away and left me alone to pedal through the heat. I bicycled down the empty road feeling a sense of self-pity I had never known. I was supposed to be done with Mongolia. The desert should have been behind me. I wanted a way out of my dreary situation, but the only thing I could do was to pedal, hour after hour under the hot sun. I reached a deeply low point and wallowed there. By the time the driver returned, the sky was beginning to lighten with another long and beautiful sunset. We stuffed my bike into the back and took off at high speed. In Mongolia, the speed limit is dictated only by the bravery of the driver, and as we left the pavement, the man accelerated. He knew the road well and took to driving like a rally racer. My seatbelt was broken, so I held on to the dashboard as we slammed over washboard tracks and drifted around corners. On a technical ridgeline, he slowed to a crawl as we bounced over large boulders. I could see the town of Konbogdi far below, a grid of fences with yurts in each square. When we arrived to the driver's yurt, his wife was there, cooking stew and rice on a small gas burner. The man's young son watched a cartoon on a large flat-screen TV that overwhelmed the small space. Another woman arrived with 2 babies, and we all ate dinner together. No one spoke English, so I sat quietly on the bed, enjoying their company. After we ate, the driver took me to a little 6-room inn and handed me off to the owner. I was considering biking out of town to sleep on the ground and save the money, but that's a strange thing to do here as well as everywhere else. And already being at the end, I was compelled to stay. For $10, I got my own room with a bed made from a few blankets over plywood and a pillow filled with sand. The toilet is a hole in the ground behind the end with a cinder block wall on 3 sides and no roof or door. I passed on taking a shower, which was just a cold bucket of water. Mostly I wanted to eat quickly, then sleep, but the owner of the inn and his other guests, a large young man and his girlfriend, came into my room. They spoke a little English, so we chatted as best we could while they looked over my things and watched me eat. They would have stayed longer, but I urged them out as they began to get comfortable. The walls here are thin, and as I lay down for the night, I couldn't avoid hearing the couple having sex. I haven't slept indoors in 3 weeks. and I'm reminded why that is.